Bigfoot, Dogman, Jersey Devil, and others. Are they real? Figments of our imagination? Or the most cleverly disregarded reality of all time? Come into the cabin. Let's sit down and find out together. Hey, welcome back to the cabin. I'm Robbie.
Yep, I'm here too. It's Johnny.
Here's Johnny. How long we've been going, and I've just now worked that joke in.
Yeah, you're a slacker.
I know. What can
I
you
can't
say?
believe I never worked it.
That's the more shocking thing, is that you haven't worked it in. So how you doing, Johnny?
Well, I don't know yet. It's Monday. Ask me Friday.
Okay, I'll ask you Friday. I'm a little tired from my weekend excursion.
That's you had a good one.
Yep. We won't get too much into that this show, because I think we can probably do a whole show on that. But I just got back from Missouri, went and visited DA, and went to the famous Joe Bald recreational campground area and Blanc Road. And it's as creepy in real life as it is in the book. Let's just put it that way.
I can't wait to hear all the details on DA's next show.
Yeah, and that's why we're not going to do it on our show, because I think Saturday's show we're probably going to get into that, because we've already got a guest coming Wednesday. So Saturday, listen for that to come around. I believe that's when DA said we were going to talk about it.
Did Steve get to make it?
He was there. We got to go hang out. I hung out with him on Wednesday, or not Wednesday. I hung out with him on Friday while DA was at his doctor's appointment. Me, Steve, and Noah hung out for a while, but he had something to do that night, so he didn't get to go out there with us. And then Saturday, he had something to do all day, so we all went over to DA's house and ate supper and hung out. So, but we got to hang. He just didn't get to go with us. And
you didn't drink any of that terrible scotch that they like, do you?
I drank a little bit of that stuff. I stuck to my beer.
I finally got to have some of that at a meetup with some friends over the summer. I haven't had scotch in years. That is such a smooth.
Which ones did you do? The Bullet or?
No, Bullet's my bourbon or
yeah.
I go to. It was is it Glenlivet?
Yeah. Steve loves the Glenlivet.
Yeah, that.
But yeah, it was a good trip overall. It was a long trip. It was like 12 and a half hours, but I mean, it's pretty. The trip back was more enjoyable as far as scenery, because I left at midnight which was great, because I got, I'd say probably 85% of the trip done before I saw hardly any traffic. It took me up through North Carolina and into Tennessee, and then in Kentucky, into Illinois, and then back around to Missouri. So it was a pretty good trip.
You can't get there from here.
I actually drove by the LBL.
Oh, my.
And I'm just going to tell you, that place is creepy even driving by it on the interstate.
I need to learn Tennessee better.
Well, it's actually, once you get into Kentucky.
Yeah, but
it goes into Tennessee, but the exit for it is once you're in Kentucky. Now, it's not really that far. We might need to plan an LBL excursion.
I'm down.
So, but it is. It was just the whole area. When I went past the sign that said LBL next 3 interchange or next 3 exits, I'm like, I had no clue I was going to drive past it. If I'd have had more time coming home, like not having to be at work today, I probably would have stopped by on the way back.
Because I think we already did the lookup. It's, 3 hours from here-ish?
Yeah. I think it, when I went by there yesterday, I think I want to say I had about 4.5 hours at that point left to get to the house.
Is that like near Fort Campbell?
It's close, I think. But
because I've been on 24, and you come from Fort Campbell south into like Nashville.
Yeah. So it was, and like I said, it was creepy. Just whole vibe and the feel of the area driving by there is just like, because everything, and I know it's wintertime, but everything's just dead. Trees, grass, everything. It's just
Campers.
campers. But yeah, I definitely want to go walk that place. I mean, because DA said LBL is a lot creepier than Joe Bald, and if it's creepier than Joe Bald, I definitely want to go check it out because that place was creepy. Like I said, I'm not going to get into too much of that now, but definitely we need to plan us an excursion up there because we can hit. We could do a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we could be up there in a couple of hours on a Friday.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's plan. We'll work something out maybe for the spring. I don't want to do dead of winter stuff.
Yeah, spring's fine with me.
Right when the leaves first start coming in, still got visibility, but you can move quiet.
So, anyway, for tonight's show,
vampires.
Yeah, vampers. And I know there are people who say vampires aren't cryptids, and obviously they're not cryptids, but some of the cryptid sightings, if you take the Mothman, for example, and I think you and I have talked about this, think about the way people have described the Mothman. Dark figure, wings, red eyes. Sounds an awful lot like the way vampires were described in legends and myths and movies and things like that. What if vampires are a cryptid that we just don't know?
What if they're in plain sight, too?
True. I mean, so I guess that's kind of the premise of the show tonight is to see what Hollywood says versus what real life says. Because, I know you're like me. You like to watch all these movies and stuff like that. I've seen a metric ton of vampire. There's more vampire movies than there are just about anything else. So, I mean, if you're going to watch a classic monster movie, it's probably going to be a vampire movie. I mean...
Yeah, there's always going to be one in there somehow or another.
Yeah, werewolves kind of get the short change. Mummy doesn't get a real... Frankenstein's actually got more movies than probably werewolves and mummies put together. But obviously, the undisputed king of the monster movies are vampire movies. Yeah. It seems like there's a new vampire movie that comes out every other day.
Well, and if you look back through history, almost every culture has a Bigfoot. Every culture has kind of a shape-shifting type creature. Every culture has a vampire.
Mm-hmm. And like we say, this stuff is based somewhat in reality. There's some form of reality or truth in all these myths and legends. I mean, you may not go into a cave and see a cave painting of a vampire, but you're going to have some kind of... I mean, think about skinwalkers. I mean, that could have been based on a vampire, for all we know. Yeah. Think about some of the things they say that skinwalkers do. That's a lot of the stuff that vampires do. So, we can't talk about vampires without talking about the most famous vampire, which was based on a true person.
About Nosferatu?
Well, yeah, same guy, but, book, movie. I mean, how many movies are based on Dracula / Vlad Tepes / Vlad the Impaler?
Good old Vlad.
Yeah. I mean, and we know he was a real person. Now, and Tyler and I were talking about this while we were waiting on you to get here tonight. There's a lot of stuff he did that he really actually did that kind of fed that moniker or that legend or whatever you want to call it. Tyler was actually telling me about one of his favorite of how the bats came into play. He said that the show that he'd seen, and I've heard a bunch of them. This is actually a really good one. He said that on the eve of a big battle or something that he had some of his guys camp out on a big hill above the main force, and he had them positioned to where the moon was behind them and behind him, and he gave out some kind of signal, some kind of call, and they all released a crap load of bats, and that kind of started that he can control bats. I mean, but if you think about it, if that's really what happened, and we don't know, we can only guess, is that, but that's pretty ingenious. If you're trying to strike fear in all these people's hearts and minds and win this battle before it even starts, that'd be pretty dang scary.
I think the complete polar opposite of Sun Tzu, his art of war, is Vlad Tepes.
Yeah, I can definitely see
Sun
that.
Tzu wanted to win over the locals and the other people and bring them on board without killing them. Vlad made very good examples.
Yeah. I'm going to kill 1,000 of you, and the other 10,000, if you want to join them, fine. If not, you can come over here.
And being, the Order of the Dragon, that was their seal, their crest. That was interesting. There's all kind of stuff you can go off of Vlad.
If I'm not mistaken, Order of the Dragon ties directly into Satan and satanic cults and rituals, because the Order of the Dragon, I mean, think about how many times in the Bible they refer to Satan as the dragon.
Oh.
So, and I'm not saying that necessarily that Vlad Tepes was a Satan worshiper or anything like that, but if he's a master tactician, as we could pretty well guess he was, especially during that time, that is a great fear to tap into. So, and like we're talking about, Bram Stoker did a lot of research on him. There's a lot of stuff that shows up in the book. Maybe not a whole lot, or there is some, but not as much in the movie, obviously, as there is in the book. Have you ever read the book?
No.
The book really gets into actually the kind of stuff that he did.
There were good movies outside of Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi stuff that went deeper.
Well,
and they were basically quoting Bram.
Yeah. Dracula Untold. I liked that because it went back and kind of went to when he first became, and there again, suspension of disbelief, where he actually became a vampire, and told how that's a story that really has never been dipped into. So I thought that was a pretty cool telling of the story with Luke Evans and who else was Charles Glass, or
what was the History Channel? I think they did like a mini series. It was like a 3 or 4 part deal.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler or something like that.
It was about Vlad.
Yeah,
and it covered some really crazy stuff. But I mean, it happened in his life. So.
Yeah. And taking away the turning into a blood-sucking demon part of it, the man himself was almost scarier than the book and the myth with some of the stuff he did.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you throw in turning into a blood-sucking demon, then obviously the book and the story is a lot worse. But if you take that part of it out, he was a sick and twisted individual.
Well, with what he had done to him and his family?
Yeah. And that's another thing that Dracula Untold kind of delved into, was the way the Turks would come in and take the kids from Romania, Transylvania, all those. Hey,
made them slaves, made them whatever the sick, twisted Turkish stuff they did.
Yeah. So that's not, obviously Bram Stoker wasn't the first telling of a vampire story, because there are plenty of others that, I think Chinese literature goes way further back than that, and they had stories of it. Talking about corpses that drink blood. I can't remember exactly how that's pronounced.
China, Japan.
Yeah.
And there are cave paintings
Yeah.
of these deities, or whatever you want to call them.
So, first off, what's your favorite vampire movie?
I like them all. Even the cheesy ones that are terrible. Everything but Christopher Lee.
The Hammer House.
I love Christopher Lee, but they went color and they were terrible. When they came on Creature Feature, I went out in the swamp and played.
Well, the Hammer House movies, you had the old Max Schreck with Nosferatu, then you had the Bela Lugosi and Claude Rains and all those, the classic. Christopher Lee was supposed to play a little bit more over the top.
He did.
Which, yeah, but that's what they wanted. That's what they're going for. All those Italian Hammer House style films are like that. If you watch any of those Italian werewolf or vampire movies, they are way over the top.
Think about this. Reality. People don't just go because you can't. Back then, disposable income. They weren't as goofy as we are today. Why would you go see? You didn't go see movies for entertainment back then. This is back in the 30s, right? When they did Max Schreck?
Yeah.
Nosferatu?
Yeah, I think it was before they even had sound. I mean,
that's what I'm getting at. It's a silent movie. And they felt inspired to make a motion picture. Something drove that. Yeah. And this is pre-Hollywood, so it wasn't, box office tickets and popcorn sales and Coca-Cola. I mean, this is way back. It wasn't the cash cow that it is now. Because you didn't, like you said, you didn't have people going to the movies just for the sheer entertainment value. They went because it was something that interested them, and they wanted to see it. And obviously, I think they wanted to be or have that scare factor because, by today's standards, obviously Nosferatu is not scary, but there's so many movies today that is pile on the gore, pile on the jump scares. That movie was genuinely creepy. It was genuinely creepy. No CGI, no special effects. Was using a mirror to bring in light and give you this. Yeah, I mean it was. But honestly, that movie's really stood the test of time. Yeah, because I mean, people are so numb to stuff like that nowadays that there's not many people who would think that was scary. But if you had somebody who had never seen any kind of modern movie, the big summer blockbuster type things, and they were just, let's say they'd been sheltered their whole life, you showed them that movie, it would probably scare the living daylights out of them. Well, it'd be neat to do a little research and find out where that movie was filmed. I think it was filmed in Germany. I think it was too, and find out the lore in that area, because and where it was released first. Mm-hmm. It'd be, well, I've heard a lot of, they actually made a movie about making that movie. Yep. And the one with Willem Dafoe. Yeah, Max Schreck was a weird individual. Let's see. The exteriors for the film were actually shot in Transylvania, in northern Slovakia, including the high Tartarus Mountains of Ravania. So they actually went to Transylvania itself. I was thinking it was in Germany. Maybe that's because Max Schreck was German. Maybe that's why I was thinking that. But or it was a German director that shot the film. Yeah. There was some tie into Germany, some way or the other. But I hadn't seen it in years. Yeah, it's probably been 10 years since I've seen it too. But there again, like we said, there was, think about the dawn of the classic age of the monster movies. That was a big thing. I mean, when Universal first released, because I want to say that was 10 or 15 years after Nosferatu, when the first Dracula movie came out. Yep. And then, I mean, those movies were just like, they were turning them out. Dracula, Son of Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Monster, Bride of Frankenstein, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And how many mummy movies? Yeah. I mean, but like you said, it was not just a sheer entertainment. They weren't churning them out. I mean, obviously they were doing it to turn a profit, but it's not like it is now. Oh, if a movie cost $30 million to make,
and they only bring in $32 million, it's considered a critical failure. If a movie cost them, I guess a movie like that back then would probably cost what, $15,000-$20,000 to make, which would probably be, by today's terms, about the same.
I can't imagine.
But I don't think they looked at it as, oh, if we only made, a couple thousand more than it cost. I don't think they looked at it as failure, because obviously those movies they're again stood the test of time, just like Nosferatu has. But it was, I don't want to use the term shock value, because I don't think it was a shock value thing back then, because that was not even a term or a thing then. But it was more storytelling. It was finding these legends that people look in or love so much and putting them up there.
To make a movie.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it.
Yeah. So and that's a tough question for me to answer too. I've got a lot that I really, really like. There's some that I can't stand. They're just, too stupid to even mention.
Like the Anne Rice stuff.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of that.
She touched on a few things that were interesting, and then it was mostly, look how cute Brad Pitt is with fangs.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise.
Well, they played up the Victorian, preppy, aristocratic vampire, which, that's part of the legend, part of the lore, I get. But when I talk about a vampire movie Lost Boys is always in the top for me.
Oh, yeah.
I love Lost Boys.
That was a fun movie.
Yeah. But it was gritty. It was more than likely, if vampires, as we see in the movies, were real, that would be more like what you would see.
I would think so.
You're not going to see the stuff that you saw in Anne Rice's things. That's just, maybe back in that era you might have seen something like that. I think vampires would have been more like what they were in the Lost Boys. They would have been hidden out in a place, and they would have been going out and taking out outliers, people that just like they did in Lost Boys. That's kind of like John Carpenter's Vampires, the first one. I didn't like the second one with Bon Jovi, but the first one with James Woods, that was a dark, gritty, okay, this is what a vampire is going to do to you. And I guess I like the realism part of it. Just, I don't even want to mention it, Johnny, but I'm going to have to. The sparkly vampires.
Oh, the glitter boys.
Yeah, I cannot stand that.
That's like the My Little Pony version of vampires.
Yeah.
I have a problem with it.
Yeah. Those books were written as a cash grab.
They were written for 13-year-old girls.
Yeah. And I know my daughter's over here looking like she's wanting to kill me right now.
I suffered through the movies because I had kids.
Thankfully, she's got her earplugs in. She ain't listening to me.
She's over probably watching Twilight right now.
You're going to get me smacked in a minute.
But they had what was that movie based out of Alaska? Was it 28 Days? Or something like that?
28 Days of Night. Or 30 Days of Night.
Something like that.
That. Yeah. Now, with Josh Hartnett.
And you think about the villages up there in Alaska that went.
But think about that premise. If you were a vampire that couldn't operate in sunlight, how smart is that to go somewhere where you get a month of nights?
Mm-hmm.
That to me is a scary premise.
That's the buffet that never closes.
Exactly. But that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. That to me is how, if a vampire is real, that's what you would be seeing. Think about the transient population of the United States. Vampires, dogman or werewolves, whichever one you want to call them, Bigfoot, all these cryptids that you would think that, and I'm not talking about the Harry and the Hendersons, I'm talking about Gugway, Genosqua, all the wild man or hairy man or the vicious ones. That, you talk about a buffet that never closes, because you ain't missing if you ain't got nowhere to be missing from.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and you start hearing more and more stories about things that go bumping tonight being seen closer to town.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're so elusive and they avoid people.
Well, and we talked about this on DAX Machina, the Black Plague of the 21st century, when we were locked in our houses for 2 or 2.5 years. You know, how long does it take nature? Like, if a house gets abandoned, how long does it take nature to take back over? Not very long, right?
Less than a year.
So, if people are no longer allowed to go out and be out in public and be around other people, and they're locked down, and these areas are not used, and these things move back in, they're not going to move back out. So, you talk about the veil being lifted or pulled back. I think that's why these sightings are on the rise now.
Yeah.
Is because these things have moved back in, and now all of a sudden we can go back out. We can be back in the woods again, places like that. You're seeing this stuff.
Yeah.
So, like I said, Lost Boys has always been one of my favorites. Always in my top. I like vampires. John Carpenter. I like that 30 Days a Night. That's a really good one. But Dracula Untold has got to be in there too, because
Who was in that?
Luke Evans was played Dracula. He was in Lord of the Rings, or no, excuse me, not Lord of the Rings. He was in the Hobbit movies. He was I think his name was Bard. He was the one that shot Smaug with the black arrow. He was also in the newest version of the Three Musketeers.
You're gonna have to loan me that if you got it.
I may have it. So
about the same time you loaned me the Howling.
Wasn't the Howling I was going to loan you. It was the Werewolf.
Werewolf. From
Yes.
Fox.
But I like that because of how it goes back into. He was a man when that movie first started, just a normal man, but they told it from the standpoint of he was a monster towards the end of the movie, but he did what he did to protect his family and his people. So it was just kind of like a different telling.
Gee, it's almost paralleling Vlad.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, because monster's a relative term.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To a canary, a cat's a monster. What movie was that from?
God, I don't know.
One of the Jurassic World movies. But it's a very good analogy, because you think about it. Like he said, you made monsters. He said monster's a relative term. To a canary, a cat's a monster. So we're just used to being the monsters. So if we call Vlad Tepes a monster, we're looking at it as, oh, I would never do something like that. Look what he did. But maybe he did this stuff because he felt like it was the only course he had to protect his family and his people. I mean, I don't know, and I'm not advocating for the atrocities that he did, but I like that because it went back and told a different side of it. Told it from his side and his perspective versus.
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, it's really good. I think. I think it's on Netflix. If you got Netflix, I think you can get it. But it's a really good movie. I think you'll enjoy it. But all these vampire movies, take Friday Night.
Oh, yeah.
And, that one's been remade and retold a couple times. But let's stick with the 80s version.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cheesy. Kind of over the top. But it hit all the major checkpoints of the classic movie vampire. He could only come out at night. He had to sleep in a coffin. He was repelled by religious objects. As long as you had faith.
As long as you had faith.
Stake to the heart, sunlight, all, garlic, all that stuff. But then you go to a movie like, what was a good one that, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, it kind of turned some of that stuff on its ear because you get Anthony Hopkins thing talking about, you know, contrary to what people believe, vampires can move around in daylight. They're just weaker. You know, they don't have all their powers.
And they sparkle.
Well, I don't think Gary Oldman did any sparkling in that movie,
No.
and he did a really good job of that.
He did. He nailed it.
But there was, they tried the cross on him. That didn't work because they went with that. He renounced God, and that was why he was where he was at, because of his true love killing herself because she thought that he had been killed, so she threw herself out the window, blah, blah, blah. So he renounced God, so therefore he was not affected by, no matter what the faith was. But if you think about it, the rest of the vampires, the ones he turned, they did have that aversion. Because remember when he put the wafer with the cross on it, on Winona Ryder's character, on her head?
Yeah.
And the fire, the brides couldn't cross the ring of fire. So it's kind of like he's transcended some of this stuff because he's the first, he's the most powerful.
Yeah.
So
he's like, if it was an 8-bit video game, he'd be the big boss.
Right. Yeah, he's Bowser.
I'm sure you saw Priest.
Yes, I did.
That was a good one with
Yeah.
a new twist on it.
Yeah.
Then there was another one.
Well, if you think about Underworld, the Underworld series put a new twist on
Loved it.
on vampires and werewolves. It was basically a disease.
Something black latex.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kate Beckinsale, black latex.
Yes.
But they traced it back to the son, Michael Corvinus.
Oh yeah.
He was not a vampire or a werewolf. He was just immortal. He had 2 sons. They were immortal. One got bit by a bat. One got bit by a wolf. Marcus got bit by the bat, turned into the first vampire. William was bitten by a wolf, turned into the first werewolf.
Yep.
Now remember, William couldn't turn back into, once he hit that wolf form, he couldn't turn back. What does that sound like? Oolonga Doglala.
Yeah.
Went down that dark path and was a wolf the rest of their lives. Couldn't come back from that. But Marcus could shift back and forth, had to sleep, had to have blood to survive. But it was a genetic disease. So I think some of the better movies mix some of the newer stuff and the older stuff. These movies that totally throw the old stuff completely out the window, I don't.
I kind of dug the Blade series.
Yeah, I think Blade kind of hit a little bit on the genetic side of things.
Blade 3 was. Yeah, that's the one where they go back to Baghdad or whatever. And
yeah, fine.
Temple and all that.
Yeah, I think that was the one that Dracula was in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Played by
Dominic.
Yeah, the guy that was in
Dominic Purcell.
Prison Break, I think, the TV show. Really good actor. And I think he did a pretty good job as Dracula.
He did a real good.
Also, I just had it. I can't remember which one I was going to talk about now. But yeah, the Marvel Morbius. The movie itself was not that great, but the premise of his vampirism was. Jared Leto's a great actor, and I think he was a pretty decent Joker. Obviously not the best one, but he was up. He was not as good as Jack Nicholson or Heath Ledger, but he was better than any of the rest of them. But
don't be thrown off on Cesar Romero.
The mustache Joker.
That was awesome.
You can see the mustache through the makeup. But well, there again, DC and Marvel both have Dracula in their series. Batman has fought Dracula. Superman's fought Dracula. Along with Captain America has fought Dracula. Morbius has fought Dracula. Spider-Man has fought Dracula. I mean, he kind of transcends all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised He-Man never fought Dracula. Yeah, he may have. But the thing is, all of our modern vampire lore, I think, stems from Dracula himself, from Vlad Tepes. But vampirism and vampires in general go way further back than him. And I don't think he was ever actually accused of being a vampire until maybe modern era. And I don't mean modern as in where we're at. But once they started looking into him and looking at some of the things he did and studying him, oh my God, He-Man had their own Dracula. Leave it to Tyler to find that for us.
Even Dracula's not safe from He-Man.
Nope. I think that's actually just Hordak with a Dracula thing on it, but it's still pretty cool. Which Hordak would actually be close to what I would consider a vampire in the He-Man series, but that's a different story. But anyway, when they started looking at, because there's rumors and tales and legends that he drank the blood of the people he put up on those big pikes. So that's where all that stuff started coming from on our end of it. What we know now as a vampire. But like we said earlier, that particular creature goes way further back than before Vlad Tepes was even born.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you get somebody like him, and people start telling stories, and they're like, "Oh, well, I heard this about this thing that used to do this.
Oh, yeah.
I bet he was one of the," and that stuff snowballs, and that's where things like that come from.
They had urban legends before urban legends were cool.
Yeah. So, but there again, it's like a broken record. We keep going back to it, but that stuff was made, or not made. That stuff was. Had you not had these legends beforehand, would we have had what we look at as Dracula based on Vlad Tepes if there weren't these things in the first place that people had seen and thought of?
Everything has a legit origin somewhere, somehow. How far are you willing to dig?
Yeah, I mean, it's like how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? Because, I mean, if I walked outside and I looked up and I saw something fly across the moon, I mean, silhouette itself across the moon, and I said, "Oh, look, it's a pterodactyl," and then a week later you go and say, "Hey, somebody saw a pterodactyl in Pickens the other day," and then somebody else says, "Man, there was a one of those Godzilla monsters." I mean, stuff builds over time, and people are going to put their own spin on it. They're going to embellish a little bit, and things are going to grow. But like you said, there's always some kind of legit basis to where all this started. And I think Vlad Tepes was a culmination of what people were talking about, and they're like, "Oh, look, he's doing the exact same things that we've heard about these things doing. He must be that." And that legend kind of started building, and now you've got what people consider the first vampire, of Dracula. But how do we know that? Let's say that if these things are real, and Vlad Tepes was what people say he was, and these things are immortal, all these other things would be tied into him anyway. He may have been or spawned some of these things that people were actually seeing. I mean, like you said, that going down the rabbit hole and the what if and the what if and the what if, but I need to put the shovel down, don't I?
I get a kick out of it. And once you start digging it, you're just going to keep digging till your head hurts. But to me, the subject's been so polluted and
diluted,
polluted, abused in the name of the almighty shekel at Hollywood.
Yeah.
And creative test groups said, "No, we're going to go this way."
Yeah.
It's hard to find a real origin.
Well, and going back to Dracula Untold, the origins of Dracula. Well, that's one person's version of what his origin could be. And like I said there again, that's based on somebody looking at it and saying, "Okay, well, how about from his standpoint? What did it look like from Vlad Tepes's standpoint? So, and I think that's a unique take.
That one that I was talking about, like from the History Channel or whatever, it was basically his viewpoint.
Yeah.
It was almost like, Dear Diary, today the Turks did bad things to me. Next entry, Dear Diary.
I did bad things to the Turks.
Yeah, so that's basically how that story was told.
Yeah.
And they were no-name actors, so I can't tell you who was who.
Well, just look at, like Genghis Khan. Now, he was a bad dude. Mm-hmm. But look at some of the things that movies have depicted him doing. We know he probably didn't do a lot of that stuff, or all of that stuff, let's put it that way. But he did a lot of stuff. And at one time, he controlled the greatest army in the world.
Yeah. And
controlled more land than the Roman Empire.
Yeah, the Roman Empire was like a second to him.
Yeah. So, you don't, especially in that time, things like that wouldn't work nowadays. Obviously, we know that because of social media and the smartness, quote unquote, of the way people are. But back then, that's how you scared people into submission. You built that legend, and you let that legend grow, and you didn't. Oh, hey, Genghis, they said you're clubbing baby seals. Well, let them keep thinking it.
And there's the other side of that coin. You sit there and you build up this boogeyman. He's your golem. You've created him. He's just evil incarnate. I've seen that done to modern figures, like in the last, 80 to 100 years. They be demonized, and all this bad stuff's portrayed on them, and they did nothing but good. But then they'll take bad people and exalt them to high places. Yep. So the whole vampire thing.
Well, let's look at it as in something that a lot of people can identify with. Look at professional wrestling. Look at how I know it's
the
fun.
Hero and the heel.
Yeah. Well, look at it. Take Stone Cold. Stone Cold was supposed to be billed as a heel, and he was doing the things that he was doing, and people got behind that, and they cheered that, and he became the first anti-hero of professional wrestling by doing stuff that 20 years before that, Ric Flair was doing the same stuff, and they were having to escort him out of arenas to keep him from getting stabbed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And conversely, when they tried to turn Sting from a babyface to a heel, it didn't work because people were like, no, and people were like getting them walking out. They had to revert him back. It's the same principle of knowing what people are looking for, knowing what people are wanting, and building on that.
Everybody wants to have a boogeyman.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to have a hero.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And
that's why characters like Ric Flair have survived as long as they have in the wrestling business, because the dirtiest player in the game. He's way better at being a heel than he was being a babyface. There's only certain people that can go back and forth. Nobody thought Hulk Hogan would make it as a heel, but he turned out to be one of the biggest heels of the 90s. Mm-hmm. Same thing with The Undertaker. Undertaker started out being a heel, but was probably one of the greatest babyfaces. One of the greatest babyfaces of all time.
Yeah. I remember watching growing up. It was, how do you make the bad guy the superstar?
Yeah, but think about that in terms of these movies. I mean, you've got people who want to come see Dracula. And people loved seeing Dracula as the hero. And how many movies has Dracula been the ultimate evil? I mean, I know you said you haven't seen Dracula Untold, and he did stuff in that movie that was bad, but he did it for the right reasons, apparently. So, but you compare that to Gary Oldman's Dracula, who was just pretty much... Now, obviously, he got redeemed at the end of the movie, but throughout the rest of the movie, he was the ultimate evil.
Yeah.
But then you go back and look at it from the Dracula Untold standpoint, he was more of an anti-hero. his people were scared of him once they figured out what was going on, but he did it for them. And then...
Those make the better movies, too, for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, maybe not even movies, just characters in history. The anti-heroes.
Well, I mean, look in Westerns, how many times Unforgiven. Mm-hmm. Clint Eastwood's character in Unforgiven was an anti-hero. Mm-hmm. And like you said, people get behind that. He'd done plenty of bad stuff in his life. He was trying to atone for that, I guess, just living his life out on his farm. Then he goes to try to get the money, and he's still trying to...
One last bounty.
Yeah, he's trying to hold off, and then little Bill pushes him a little too far, and you see what happened.
Yep.
But people get behind that because it's... And the series Werewolf was the same way. The one we were talking about on Fox. Eric Gord was just a normal, average, everyday kid, and he got caught up in something. His best friend pulls him into something. Then he gets accused of murdering his best friend.
It's so far back. I can't remember that. It was back in like 87.
Yeah, 87. 86, 87. But he gets accused of murdering his best friend. Mm-hmm. He has to go on a the Incredible Hulk road trip from the TV series, the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk, going to the different towns. You could play the Incredible Hulk theme over that, and it would make as much sense.
Yep.
But he killed people in that series, but it was only the bad people. And it's like, okay, yeah, he's a werewolf, but he's only killing bad people, so that's okay. I mean, same thing with Dracula Untold. Oh, he's a blood-sucking demon that made a deal with a worse demon and lost his soul, but he did it for the right reasons, so it's okay.
The noble savage.
Yes. Noble savage.
Oxymoron.
Yeah. But I think vampires are portrayed more like that in movies than just about any... I mean, obviously you got your movies, vampires, John Carpenter's vampires. There weren't any other than maybe whichever one of the Baldwins was in that. Because it never really carried on with what happened to him after he got bit by that girl at the end of the movie. But he still, even though he was turning, he still helped James Woods' character and did what needed to be done.
Yeah, I can't.
But other than that, there were no vampires in that movie that had any redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Yeah, they were just blood-sucking things.
Yeah. But one thing about Monster Squad, we was talking about that earlier before you came in. Dracula, pure evil, Wolfman torn between good and evil. When he was a man, he knew what he was going to turn into, and he was trying to get himself locked up, trying to do the right thing. But once he turned into the werewolf, pure evil, Frankenstein's monster, did what Dracula told him to until the kids broke through, and then he was the redeeming character in the movie. Like you said, people get behind stuff like that because it's not always as black and white as the bad guy and the good guy. That gray area, like you said, anti-hero. Yeah, Stone Cold did bad stuff, but he did it for the right reasons. So I'm going to, and he gets up and, kicks his boss in the nuts and then has a beer afterwards.
Yeah,
But he's still going to go out and stomp a mud hole in him.
I wonder how much natural light he sold.
Probably a lot. Wonder how much he's drank.
He's still in good shape.
Yeah, I'd like to be in that kind of shape after drinking that many beers. But I guess the whole dichotomy of vampires, you can trace what we watch in the movies back to Vlad Tepes, That's where most all the vampires are based that we get in movies. Most all of them are loosely based on that archetype of a vampire.
Yeah.
You look at something like The Night Flyer from Stephen King. That's a little bit different. Did you see the remake of Fright Night with Colin Farrell?
No.
They kind of diverged a little bit on what vampires could be, and not so much that they were that they were not that type of vampire. Excuse me, but there were different clans, groups, subspecies, whatever you want to call it. There's a scene in that movie where he starts talking about the different types, I guess, and he says Jerry Dandridge, who's they kept that name. He said he's from one of the worst types that you could ever come across, and they're basically subterranean. They didn't live in coffins. They tunneled under the ground, things like that. They were just really bad, really nasty.
I wonder if they didn't get some of that, from Brian Lumley.
Could be. That was a very good series.
When you got after the first Necroscope, you got into the later books. When he got over into their world,
Mm-hmm.
there were the ones that lived above ground in the spires, and
Yep.
some were sub. That's where a lot of your mythos about running water.
Yeah.
Because the water portals and the silver, and it was all kind.
That was a very in-depth. Because he had the Necroscope series, but then he also had the Vampire World series. This is what you're talking about right there, when he went over into the vampire world.
Mm-hmm.
But you also had the Lost Airy series, where it kind of goes way back, and supposedly I don't know if did you get into those?
I did the Necroscope series, and I went through basic and AIT. I read them, and I got married, had kids. Never finished the series.
There's like I said, there's the Necroscope series, which you read. Then there's the Vampire World series, the Lost Airy series, and the Vampire Wars. Okay, Vampire Wars goes into, and there's also Necroscope Resurgence, where they have the new Necroscope that gets the main character's power. He kind of same way that the original Necroscope kind of took over the other guy's body and turned himself into himself again. You remember that in the first book? Anyway, he kind of imparts his consciousness to this guy, kind of like the same way that vampire did in his head.
This is back in the 80s.
Nah, I know.
This is back in 1990, maybe, when I was reading.
Anyway, they're all interconnected. But I say that to bring the point up is, in his book, the first vampire, his name was Shaitan. So basically what Brian Lumley was writing was Satan was the first vampire.
Yeah, Shaitan, that's one of the old words. But, yeah. I mean, Lumley did research.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he didn't just sit around and smoke a joint and start typing. I mean, this guy had really cool historical stuff in there.
Yeah. So, last word. What's your favorite vampire movie? Just give me one.
So old school. Twilight.
I don't
Can
think.
you say it with a straight face?
No, you can't. That's not old school.
No, I mean, really, I really like the Max Shrek stuff.
That would be homeschool. But so you gonna go with Nosferatu?
Yeah. I mean, it's the first cinematic thing. But anything Vlad related would come in right there with it. So.
Yeah. Tyler like Scooby Doo and the Vampire.
Did it have Scrappy Doo in it? I'd rather watch it then.
Yeah. We don't like Scrappy.
He'd look a lot better under a Buick.
Yeah. We got a couple of Buicks we could send his way. Little inside joke.
Cost $250 a piece.
Yeah. So, you gonna go with Nosferatu? It's hard to pick, but I'm gonna have to go with my old standby. I'm gonna have to say Lost Boys.
Yeah.
I mean,
I could stand to watch that one again.
oh yeah. Obviously, I'm a Kiefer Sutherland fan. He did a great job in that.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Patrick was really good in that movie.
Jamie
Gertz was good in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Nanook, the big husky or the Malamute that he had, the dog.
Oh God, yes.
But but as far as historically, I think Nosferatu and Bram Stoker's Dracula, historically to what we know as Vlad Tepes, are probably the two best examples of what we know.
Mm-hmm.
Then throw Dracula Untold in there as in that same subset, but just from a different perspective, different point of view.
If you just want good kick-ass entertainment, you can't go wrong with Blade.
Yeah, Blade's a good movie. I really liked the first one. Second one was okay. Third one kind of was getting to the point of, okay, what can we do now?
I just like the alternative history part of it in Blade 3.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was the same cheesy, choreographed kung fu crap with a lot of CGI in it.
Yeah. Well, in the first one, that was something that nobody had seen. That's really, I mean, and, you know, Blade was not technically a vampire. He was a Dampier, Daywalker. All their strengths, none of their weaknesses, stuff. But there again, Blade was a comic book character. So,
exactly.
Yeah, they're gonna make stuff over the top. But for the most part, top to bottom, that was a really good movie.
Throw Chris Christopherson in something, it's got to be good.
Oh yeah, Whistler.
Yeah, something about Jessica Biel and her leather pants, something.
Yeah, that was a redeeming quality to that movie. I'll give you that one. And you know, not for nothing, Triple H was in that movie, and he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he played a good. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah. But
Pomeranians.
The little Reaper Pomeranians.
Oh, that was creepy.
So, well, I think we kind of scratched the surface on some movies and legends and lore. We didn't get any real specific legends, but there's so many. I know we just, in a 45-minute show, we just don't have enough time to really.
I think you need to do a little digging into Cherokee lore. See if you can find something.
I can do that. But so I think though a good takeaway from this is we need to plan some investigations.
Yep.
And that'll go along with what we're planning on doing on the show, which is possibly adding some video. Yeah. So we're going to try to plan something for next Thursday night. So y'all be looking for some of those videos to come out. I mean, obviously, probably by the time this comes out, it'll have already happened. But when you're listening for it in sequence, it'll be within a couple of shows of this.
So just watch the obituaries, and we'll go.
Yeah. You may be listening to this posthumously. But anyway, well, folks, if you want to drop us a line, give us some kind of topic to talk about, look into, you can get us through our email address, which is what'sreallyouthere2022@gmail.com. You can get us on our Facebook page at What's Really Out There. Leave us a message on the YouTube page, which is also What's Really Out There. We all monitor that pretty much all times. We've actually got a TikTok that we're starting now. I don't know how far into that we are, but we're going to start putting some shorts and things on that. We're going to start putting some shorts on YouTube. We are at 460 something, I think, Tyler. Maybe a little bit more than that. 460 something subscribers now, so we're getting there. Johnny and Tyler and I actually have discussed some new equipment that we're thinking about purchasing. Will help us out on the video side of it. So we're trying to grow, folks. So if you just keep hitting that like and subscribe button for us, that'll help us get to that level. If you enjoy these shows, because we enjoy doing them, and I hope y'all enjoy listening to them. We always get positive comments on the episode. So.
Oh yeah, I hear people all the time about it.
Yep, and hopefully we'll get Steve back from his war zone that he's been working in right now.
Oh, what a mess.
Yeah, but yes. Hopefully Steve will be back in the next couple of weeks. He's got a lot of stuff going on at his real job that he's having to take care of. He's kind of a high ranking individual, so he's got a lot of stuff he's got to deal with. But hopefully he'll be back in a couple of weeks, and we can get Steve back on, and hopefully Steve can get with us on this thing that we're doing maybe in the next week or so, and we'll have some good video and some good topics to talk about. Other than that, Johnny, got anything else?
No, I can't wait to see how this TikTok thing works. That's kids and all their damn new gadgets.
Well, Taylor is in charge of our TikTok, and she's working on that. Tyler's working on some other stuff. All me and you got to do is sit here and talk. They got the hard job. So,
let the techies be techies.
Yep. Our technical crew over here. Yep. All right, folks. Well, that's all we got for this show. Come back to the cabin next time. We'll see you then.
Y'all have a good one.
Bye.